I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast. My name is Dr. James Bryant, your host for today's show. And today we have a very special guest, Sarah Banowetz. You may actually, if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, know that Banowetz Marketing is a sponsor of this podcast. And they actually have a commercial with Sarah's lovely voice. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I am good. It's nice to be here, Dr. Bryant. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
No, I think this is great, Sarah. We're going to include the links to your company website, to your LinkedIn profile, or wherever you want people to find out more information about you in the show notes. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
So I'm an entrepreneur. I was raised in entrepreneurship too. I have 6 children, 4 biological and 2 adopted. I've been married for 21 years.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And so my husband and I wanted to raise our children in entrepreneurship. I just happen to be the entrepreneur of the family. So,
Well, that's cool. And also, I asked a lot of guests this as well. Can you tell our audience something about you that would not show up on your bio that may be of interest to the audience?
I love Ethiopia. And I've been there 5 times. I plan on living there when my kids are out of the house. And I was 12 when I fell in love with Ethiopia, and it's changed my life. I credit a lot of who I am today to my Ethiopian influence.
Oh,
Or
that
the
is
Ethiopian
cool.
influence on me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how that unfolded. You were 12 years old, and now you have this Ethiopian influence in your life. Tell a little bit about that story.
So I was 12. I remember the moment very clearly. My parents had friends that were missionaries in the countryside in Ethiopia, and they were home on furlough. And so I was sitting down at my parents' coffee table, flipping through their photo album from Ethiopia and listening to them talk to my parents about stories from Ethiopia. And I just remember falling in love and thinking, I want to live there one day and tell people about Jesus, because if I love you, I will tell you about Jesus. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's what I want to do. And so I've been working in that direction. And it's actually a big why as to why I'm an entrepreneur.
Oh, that is cool. That is an excellent story. And so, you mentioned your husband, Matt, and I know that you're not an engineer, but your husband is an
Yes.
engineer. And so you may be able to talk about some of the issues that he may be going through, but we're going to have him on the podcast too. So tell
Yes.
Matt that he's going to have to come on the podcast for our listeners. But so tell us a little bit about Banowetz Marketing and what you're working on now.
So we are a marketing agency that we built because of my trips to Ethiopia. I was working in-house for my parents' car dealership. They own an independent car dealership with a really good reputation. It's not like your typical car dealership. It's been around for 30 years. Warehouse Auto in Swisher, Iowa. And so I was the marketing director, and I was traveling to Ethiopia a lot. This was when my kids were even younger. We were looking for an agency to help us as a small family business. And we interviewed several agencies. We worked with a couple, but agencies are built under this model of doing large projects for companies and not providing necessarily that entrepreneurial hustle and that pivoting and flexibility that a family business needs, a small business needs, like a business on Main Street America. So when we ended up adopting 2 teenagers from Ethiopia, and now I've had to be at home. Granted, one of my claims to fame is that my daughters and I were in Ethiopia when the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow.
So that was my last trip to Ethiopia. But because of the adopting of the teenagers, and we adopted older than our oldest biological children, which is what you're not supposed to do, I've had to spend a lot of the last 6 years back at home, except for this trip to Ethiopia where I took my daughters. And so when I now needed to be back at home, I built an agency that we were looking for. So our agency is not your typical marketing agency. It very much is a fractional marketing department for small Main Street America family businesses that provide entrepreneurial hustle and we really work with our clients' budgets to make sure that we're providing the very best service we can for what their business can support.
Yes, and I can attest to that. I have a testimonial for Banowetz Marketing. They're the team that put together my website and helped me put together some other marketing materials. And whenever there is a need, they're always there to meet the need and adapt that need to the budget that I have. And so, Sarah, I really do appreciate everything that you've been able to do for me.
Well, thank you. That's really great to hear. Oh, and I still have, or the YouTube viewers, I still have your award that you gave me. The resilience and reinvention reward that we got from the Business Made Simple. When we were both part of the Business Made Simple family, and Sarah Banowetz is receiving this Feels Like Family award for helping to redesign my website.
Yes, and you do feel like family. And so now, in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, my understanding is that Banowetz Marketing is not the first company that you've had.
No.
So tell us a little bit about that progression.
So after my first son was born, I came home. My husband and I had decided that we wanted the mom to be, or one of us to be, a stay-at-home parent. Mm-hmm. That said, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I'm with I helped him through college. I worked full time while he went through college. He graduated a week later. Our son was born. A week after that, he started his first full-time engineering job. And I was now at home with a newborn baby and going crazy. And I have to do something. So I started my first business, which was a wedding planning business.
Oh, cool.
Because we had already planned our wedding. I was like, hey, I am an administrative, and I'm like, okay, I'll plan other people's weddings. So it's called Sensibly Elite Bridal Planning.
Ooh.
Because you want to balance, sensibility with elite. So Sensibly Elite Bridal Planning. I worked on that. That was like the foundation of my business. So that's where I got my legal entity set up, my first websites, business cards, first decisions that I made about marketing. So I felt like that just set up a nice foundation. Our second pregnancy was a surprise pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And I realized it was not going to be possible for me to do the wedding planning and have two babies. So our 4 biological children came very fast. They're stair steps. So I put the business, I kept the legal entity set up. I kept, every time the sales tax form would arrive, I'd put 0. Yeah. And I kept, that up. And then when my 4 kids were little, we kept going to get family photos, and I was never happy with how they turned out. Yeah. And so we pretty much literally ate rice and beans for an entire month so that I could afford my first digital SLR camera.
Oh, wow.
And during that month, I printed off I actually recommend this to everybody. If you can't afford something, print off the owner's manual first, because you're so tenacious with it and you really want it so bad. So I read through the owner's manual for my first digital SLR camera. And by the time I picked it up, I was I could shoot manual, and I just went for it. Oh, wow. So my second business, I turned that entity into a photography studio. And that actually did really well. So that did really well. It was called Sarah Banowetz Photography, and it was a artisan portrait photography studio. And I got to do that around my kids' schedules. I would edit photos and reply to sales emails and stuff, talking to customers and getting new customers from my phone. I had a smartphone. I can't imagine being a young mom without a smartphone, because there's no way you'd be able to run a business otherwise, because it'd be really hard. You'd have to hire a receptionist, someone who could answer stuff during the day. Mm-hmm. And then that's what turned into my work with Warehouse Auto, was because the work that I was doing as a photographer for marketing was working for me. But the photography industry is really hard to have employees that I really care about hiring. Yeah. I really care about employees. I really do believe that entrepreneurship helps with human flourishing. And so I saw that the work of my hands was producing fruit for myself, but I wouldn't be able to sustain a company with employees. And Warehouse Auto had employees. And now by this point in the timeline, we have now hit the recession, the 2008 recession.
Yeah.
So Warehouse Auto was struggling. They needed new marketing, new branding. And so we rebranded them, and I went in-house with them, put the photography on the side again, just like I had done with the wedding planning business. And then that's how I ended up with the second business, just being just sitting there.
Yeah.
What's funny now is like behind this door behind me, I have my camera equipment, and I now, as a corporate photographer, can afford even better equipment. So now I shoot with like L series lenses.
Mm-hmm.
I barely get to shoot anymore because I'm too busy with the marketing and running the business and managing employees and that kind of thing. But I have all of this equipment that and I just love the way that I did that. Like, started off small, trying to build without debt. And so, the $20,000 to $30,000 worth of photography and computer equipment that I now have, the lighting and everything, it just really means a lot to me because it came with blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. No, that is a beautiful story of not allowing your circumstances to dictate your journey in entrepreneurship. Like, you were going to do something, right? It wasn't going to stop you. You're like, I'm going to do something, and we need to figure this out. And it's that level of tenacity, the level of knowing that this is what you are made to do, something different. And I think that's awesome that you kept going. And the whole concept of that, the whole purpose of entrepreneurship, or one of the purposes of entrepreneurship, is to help with human flourishing. I think that is a beautiful concept. I don't know if I've ever heard that before, but that's a beautiful concept.
Oh, there's a little book, and I can't believe it's not more popular, but there's a little book. It's like $5 on Amazon. And when I say little, I mean it's physically a little book. Mm-hmm. And it's titled that. And I will tell you that I read that probably 15 years ago. I don't know, 10 years ago. And it's one of my favorite books. And it's just this tiny little, it's more like a pamphlet.
Yeah. Yeah. But the concept is beautiful, and something that we as entrepreneurs need to keep in mind. I was having a conversation with someone earlier, and it's kind of like the whole concept that the blessings that we receive are not just for us.
Yes.
Some of it is for us, but it's also for us to be a blessing to other people, and thinking about entrepreneurship from the standpoint of helping to provide human flourishing. I think is, again, a beautiful concept. Don't want to keep kind of hitting on that, but that is an absolutely beautiful concept. So when most of my listeners, as you know, are in the engineering construction area and engineering consulting area, folks with a STEM background. There's some folks in academia as well that listen in. And so thinking about that market, I always tend to say that engineers are people too. So the same success principles that may apply to you in marketing or photography, or to your husband Matt in managing engineers, the same general principles apply. And so what I always ask some of the guests are, what are some success principles that you would love to share with our audience?
Well, I will say that pulling people around me that are strong in my weaknesses has been pivotal to my entrepreneurship journey, and family journey too. I will just say, just walking through life. Mm-hmm. So I tend to I might at first feel like it's offensive to myself to realize that I have a weakness, but then I'm like, okay, wait a second. Everyone has weaknesses. Yeah. I am not God. And some of the things that I am weak in, other people are super strong in, and they love running in those directions. Yeah. So when I first started hiring at Banowetz Marketing, it was, okay, Sarah, literally writing down what my weaknesses are. And by this point, when I started Banowetz Marketing, it was 4.5 years ago. And so I was in my mid 30s. So by this point, I have a pretty good clue of what my weaknesses are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started hiring for my weaknesses. And I will say and with my kids, taking care of my kids, I am not a good teacher. I personally am not a good teacher. In fact, what's crazy is we're getting ready to release a training program for entrepreneurs who can't afford yet the done for you services. We're going to teach them what we do and walk them through it. It'll be like it's a Slack channel community and we'll have office hours and everything. And I want to do this for the community. And I'm thinking, but I am not a good teacher. And I know I'm not a good teacher because we used to try to homeschool, and that just did not go well for, everyone would be like, oh, just unschool. Well, I have an engineering husband, and that means we have engineering like children.
Yes.
And I felt like we needed to get them into at least one or two of them specifically into more structure.
So wait. Tell us a little bit more about this program that you're putting together. There may be some people that are interested in this program that you're putting together. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So we just completed the work for our largest client ever.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we've done a lot of rebranding. That is what, even though we're a fractional marketing department that can do whatever needs to be done, we pull people around to make it happen. What has really happened and what's really shaken out in the last several years is that we are really good at branding and rebranding. And when I say that, I'm talking about the whole shebang. Like, we're talking technology that goes into that, like systems and just everything. So our largest client was actually a white label with another agency. They really thought they'd been working with this client for a while and said, you know what, Sarah really does well with family businesses and they're used to more corporate work. And so they paired us up with this client. And it was a large family business that needed a full rebrand. And we worked together with this agency. And so what we ended up doing was, at the beginning of our work with them, they had said, well, what's the path we're going to take? And I said, well, I make the path up as I go. I mean, I know like specifically the little pieces, but I don't put it together. I do it as we're building it, because each company we work with needs to be so customized.
Yep.
But since they were so large, they really wanted a path to build out for them. And the path I see in my head is kind of like the Candyland path, you know?
Yeah.
With all the little pieces and stuff, with all colored squares. So that's what we did is I said, just bear with me. I'm used to walking businesses through this. We get to the end of that journey and I'm like, oh, I could build this as a path. Like, I could actually build this ahead of time as a path, and it might even help our smaller clients too. So we built that. The problem is it's a $90,000 product.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking messaging, visual branding, sales tools, systems, team development. Like, it is a $90,000 product. And I'm like, okay, but I love working with small family businesses. So while we're selling this to the large family businesses, what about the small family businesses? And so we are going to be training small family businesses to do for themselves what we do, and it'll be 1/10 of the cost. Yeah. So it is a monthly membership fee. You don't have to go. You can go as fast or slow as you want through the program. And we're going to have office hours. We're going to tell you exactly like how I lead my team to getting the work done. We're going to lead you to get the work done, and you can bring your team in so that we're leading your team to get the work done. And I anticipate it's going to take those businesses. Well, I mean, it will take them longer to get the work done than if we were to do it. And so with the monthly fee, I anticipate it being they're going to end up spending between the monthly fee and the staff that they use to get the work done. I'm anticipating it'll be about 1/10 of the cost.
Okay.
So about $9,000 to get all this work done instead of $90,000. So yeah, we're building that right now. And then I'm hiring a teacher to help us because I know. So Annie and I are my marketing director. I gave her my job when she advanced in our company. And so now I'm managing partner. So between managing partner and Annie being marketing director, our teacher is actually my best friend since the 4th grade. The crazy story and the crazy story in this is that I literally am driving down a major road in our city thinking, I really, I had just had a conversation with one of these large companies, and I'm like, I love working with the small businesses though. And how do I do this? We'd have to teach. I'm not a good teacher. And literally right after I thought that, my best friend texted me and she said, Sarah, will you please pray for me? She's a full-time teacher in this education system, in the school system. And she's like, I really want to get into entrepreneurship. What do I do? I'm looking.
Ooh.
This was like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay, her name's Stacy. I'm like, Stacy. So I called her back right then and I didn't talk. I mean, I asked questions, but I didn't want to just like jump down as like, and what was crazy is we get like 15 minutes into the conversation and she's like, I guess I just wish that God would drop something in my lap. And I start laughing because of the situation, because my phone was like almost on my lap. It was sitting next to me in the car. And, when it vibrated and her text like practically dropped in
Dropped
my
in your lap.
And I hadn't said anything yet because I didn't want to like monopolize the conversation. So I had just been listening to her to see if what she's even thinking would fit with what I was thinking. And it was like lining up so amazingly. So I start laughing. Well, she's such a sweetheart. She goes, oh yeah, I guess I shouldn't anticipate that God would do. And I'm like, no, Stacy, you don't understand. Like, I'm laughing because here, let me tell you. And then I told her the story and she was just shocked.
Oh, wow.
And so she is still working. She's going to do like what you're doing, hustle, until ready to quit the full-time, until she's ready to quit the full-time job and do this as a side hustle. We don't know how long it'll take.
Yeah.
Whether it'll be months, a year, more, I don't know. But we're just seeing how it goes.
No, I think that is really exciting. I'm sorry that I derailed you, but when you start talking about the program, I thought that would be of interest to folks because you may have some small and medium-sized engineering firms that may be interested. They may have someone that is tasked with marketing, but even those firms may be able to learn something from your program. So I wanted to make sure that we got that in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
And so, all right, back to success principles. Can you give us maybe 2 or 3 success principles that our audience can take home with them today?
So, living below my means, both personally and professionally, has helped. I love the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Yes.
It's pretty much the envelope system for businesses. In fact, we now use that personally too, because instead of taking out cash every payday for when my husband gets paid, we still do the debit card thing. We transfer the money in account. So Profit First, I recommend it to every business leader I ever talk to. And then specifically for engineers, because I have been married to an engineer for 21 years, and is communication skills. So I would say strong communication skills. My husband actually does surprisingly well with this, but I do credit a lot of that too. He has had 2 amazing bosses. So he's only had 2 professional jobs. His first engineering job, he had a great boss. He decided to switch companies so that he could be a design engineer instead of fixing other people's designs. And that boss, Leo, he's had since Abby was born. So almost 16 years he had this second boss. And I credit Leo with a lot of this communication skills. So my husband's company has worked really hard, specifically Leo, in building that with Matt. And he's an engineering manager now. So it would be really hard to be an engineering manager if you didn't have strong communication.
It's hard to be a good engineering manager if you don't have communication skills. There is a difference.
And the one thing I would say about this in speaking to engineers is you wouldn't build anything else without intentionality. Like everything engineers build is with intention and a lot of research. So I would just encourage all engineers is to be also intentional and do a lot of research around communication, interpersonal skills. One of the things that has really helped both Matt and I am a strong communicator. I feel like that's what a strong point is, but I've even learned a lot from this. So my mom's a counselor and she was an RN and then she got her master's degree in counseling. And she is licensed in EFT. And this is going to make every engineer listening to this, what EFT stands for, it's going to make you cringe. Bear with me here. It stands for emotionally focused therapy. So ignore how cringy the name is, but it's essentially a systematic approach to handling feelings so that they become understandable and therefore actionable to improving relationships. Mm-hmm. And so I will say that that's been really impactful for me too, not just my husband, but me too. So I would say that those are, and I didn't write this in my notes, but honestly, just following God and how try not to be anyone else, just try to be myself.
Yes.
And follow the path that God has for me and not the path he has for someone else.
Yeah.
So
you have to be authentic to who you are.
Yes.
And when you try to live a life that someone else is living, you're not being authentic. If you're not really living for the reasons that are important to you, you're not doing it for authentic reasons. I think that a lot of great things happen when we show up authentically who we are.
I agree.
Well, Sarah, I have really enjoyed our time and our talk together. It's really cool to kind of see how things are growing for you in a direction that is happening for you personally and for Banowetz Marketing. I wish you continued success as you move forward with all of your efforts. I know that is going to be an awesome program that you're putting together. And I just really want to thank you for everything you've done for me. I want to thank you for being here as a guest on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Bryant. I really appreciate it. And good job with everything. I just appreciate everything you're doing too. So excellent job. And I've been watching you for the last, I don't know, it's been like 2 years now. Like you're rocking it.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to end this podcast episode like I end every episode. And that is, many people know what to do. And there are fewer people that know how to do it. But there is a select group of people that actually follow through, take action, and are doing it and living a life full of meaning and purpose, the life of their dreams. And what I will say to you, Sarah, is I want to thank you for being part of that select few.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.